we have a new Borors boss, Queen Kayla Bin Kroog. Hi and welcome to a spoiler review and a deck tech video for this discard Kadra stax Borors commander. So she's a 3 mana white-red generic for a 2/3 human noble legendary creature with an activated ability: tap 4 mana, discard all the cards in your hand, then draw that many cards. That's good, that's filtering through your deck. But here comes the crazy part. You may choose an artifact or creature card with mana value 1, you discard it this way, then you do the same for artifact creature cards with a mana value of 2 and 3, return those cards to the battlefield. You may only use this ability as a sorcery. This is an absolutely amazing ability. She comes into play at a really low CMC free mana cost. That's great, you can get her into play quite fast and you can start to do her cool thing. So on a single activation, 4 mana only, you could throw down an Esper Sentinel, a Ediswan Canonist and an Imperial Recruiter. Instead of paying 6 mana for all of this, you pay 4 colorless mana and you get to draw 3 more cards to do it all again next turn. I find it absolutely amazing that we can trick into play a Grand Abolisher here. Remember that you're activating your ability, the circle goes around the table, and if everybody pass, Grand Abolisher will be in play before they have a chance of getting priority back to them. Playing counterspells against this commander is like a joke. Once you've activated commander, you can have that Archon of Emira in play and your opponents can't interact with it, or well, they can of course with the spot removal, but it is in play. It is doing its effect immediately. You see, Borors has a lot of really strong CMC 1, 2 and 3 creatures that will synergize greatly with this commander, basically going for the stax strategy here. But it can be a little bit tricky to achieve a form of combo with her. For example, a classic mono red combo, dual caster mage with twin flame or heat shimmer, basically creating infinite 2/2s with haste. But the problem is that when you tap your commander, let's say you have twin flame in your hand, you don't have dual caster mage, and you activate commander, twin flame goes to the bin. Same thing with Kiki and Village Bell Ringer. Now sure, Village Bell Ringer will come into play. That will actually be a very great trick with the commander, by the way, because that will untap the commander, and that's great. You can activate the commander once again the same turn. But if you have a Kiki in your hand and you don't really have the mana to get Kiki into play, but you have the mana to activate commander, you're gonna throw Kiki into the graveyard and you can't really, or well, you can get it back, but it's tricky. In the end, discarding your entire hand to the graveyard makes it problematic. Or well, there is an exception. We have one combo that really likes going to the graveyard. So we have this mono red all-star card, Underworld Breach, and we also have the mono white, not an all-star but pretty strong card, Sevin's Reclamation. So if you accidentally get your Underworld Breach into your graveyard with your commander, because you kind of want to dig and you can't win with Underworld Breach at the moment, you can eventually dig into Sevin's Reclamation, and if you discard that one too, well, then you can flashback it and get the Underworld Breach into play from the graveyard, and then you can sculpt basically whatever win you want. There's just another problem. You see, Archon of Emira is a really strong card potentially for this deck, as you could easily become that stax deck, and if you're gonna run this, then your Underworld Breach combo doesn't really make sense at all. So you could say that let's skip all the stack stuff, let's just go turbo fast combo, let's go Underworld Breach, it will synergize greatly with the commander and we can easily win with something like Grinding Station and other cool Underworld Breach tricks. Then you have another big problem. Besides creatures that are really good at interacting with stax effects, Borors doesn't really have any good ways to interact with the Grixis Turbo Spellslinger Storm combos that's out there. And even though you try to turbo this as much as you possibly can, you will never be that fast. So in the end, you're playing a slower combo deck that won't be able to interact with the faster combo decks, so therefore you have to play the stax creatures so you're able to interact with the fast combo decks, but that means that you can't play your Storm Underworld Breach combo. Or well, you could basically just ignore everything I'm saying and play it anyway, and well, I don't recommend it though. But I would actually recommend having Underworld Breach inside your deck anyways, even though you're going for the Archon of Emira and all the stax creatures that will basically shut down the Underworld Breach from being a functional combo, because Underworld Breach just happens to be a great card regardless. There will be games where your opponents will kill your Archon of Emeria and all your stacks cards, and then suddenly you can use Underworld Breach as a big value mid-range card, basically rebuilding your entire board state more or less. Also, what's really cool about this commander is that you don't really have dead cards. You're filtering. You don't actually have a card, you can't, well, you do have a card as you're putting cards into play with this, so you do have card value production, but you're filtering. Cards are being replaced with new cards. So if you have a dead card in your hand, don't worry, your commander will swap that out for another potential good card. But how are we actually gonna win here? In the end, Kiki-Jiki, Village Bellringer or with Celios Conscript is absolutely amazing. Both Celios Conscript and Village Bellringer will be great with the commander as they will be able to untap the commander. So if you have Kiki-Jiki in your hand, you don't want to have it in your opening hand, you want to have it in like the later sections of the hand. So if you have Kiki-Jiki in your opening, try to mulligan away from that, because you want to tutor into Kiki-Jiki or draw into Kiki-Jiki. But then if you have it in your hand, just make sure that you're casting it before you're activating your commander. And I really love how you can get a Village Bellringer into play with your commander without paying for it, and then just activate your commander again. Sure, that's 8 mana to do 2 activations at the same time, but this deck is trying to go for the longer game, so you could actually get there. Speaking of making the game go longer, beatdown could be a thing. We have this creature called Mirror Entity that can basically overrun if you have a lot of mana available to you. And by the way, you can attack with all of your creatures and wait for blockers. And after blockers have been announced, then you can pump your entire board state afterwards. I think this is a perfect finisher because how the game plan with this queen works is that you're gonna be very consistent in a lot of card draw, getting an enormous board state of really small creatures, and then you make all of those creatures enormous. But we have one more combo that we can go for, the Conspicuous Snoop combo. What I really like about this one is that it's a 1-card combo. You need to get your hands on the Goblin Recruiter, which by the way has a CMC 2, so you can get that into play with your commander. You have Goblin Matron that can tutor for Goblin Recruiter, and you have Imperial Recruiter that can also find the Goblin Recruiter. And we also have Recruiter of the Guard to find the Goblin Recruiter. Now when Goblin Recruiter comes into play, you can search out any number of goblins and put them on top of your library in any order, and you will arrange them like this: Conspicuous Snoop, Torch Courier, Kiki-Jiki, and then Mog Fanatic. First, you need to draw a card, draw the Conspicuous Snoop, then cast Conspicuous Snoop. Torch Courier is now flipped and revealed on top of your library. Pay 1 red mana, draw a cast, Mog Torch Courier, sacrifice Torch Courier to give Conspicuous Snoop haste. Kiki-Jiki is now on top of your library. Activate the hasted Conspicuous Snoop and create a token copy of itself. Kiki-Jiki can target non-legendary things. It can target itself, so Conspicuous Snoop, as it's not legendary, can target itself. You make infinite tapped Conspicuous Snoops, and then with the last one you tap it, target the Goblin Recruiter to shuffle the library, and now put Mog Fanatic on top of your library, and here you have infinite damage. It is however a little bit of a tricky combo to assemble, as if you're accidentally drawing into some of the combo pieces, it gets annoying. But as it is a 1-card combo where we have a lot of tutors for the Goblin Recruiter, I think it's fine. So we have a bunch of different variations of combos where all of them have more or less some problems with them, but also solutions that will make them work fine. We have an amazing card draw and a great strategy game plan with stacks creatures with this card draw capability. But suddenly we have a really big problem we have to talk about. This will be a very commander-centric deck, which is a big problem by the way for most commander decks out there. Now we have a CMC cost of 3, that's great because the command attacks will be 5, 7, 9, and that's kind of fine, so we can be a bit durable. Also, we can come into play quite early in the game before that annoying Draenei Magistrate. Also, I don't think this should be the priority number 1 in a pod. It could be depending on people's feelings and depending on the pod structure, but there are usually more important things to look out for in a commander game than this. I mean, somewhere around the pod there should be a player with this combo potential, and that should draw a lot more focus. So in the end, I'm not that worried that it is commander focused. Now some of you might say that it's gonna be tricky to actually build this, so to make sure that you're always hitting 3 things. Now maybe, but there are honestly so many different things in the cEDH universe on CMC2, 1 and 3 that we can throw down. Remember, you're hitting artifacts as well. As long as you're keeping a really high hand size, around 4, 5 and 6, you should always have 3 targets for your ability. I actually like Arcum's Astrolabe here. It's a CMC1 artifact, so you can get it into play with your commander, and when it comes into play, you get to draw a card. Ragavan, that's a great CMC1 target you can hit. Here's a very important thing I need to mention, that the stax cards you're gonna add inside this deck will vary depending on the metagame cEDH currently is in. I could sit and tell you what you should have inside your deck currently versus the current metagame, but that could change over a few months or in a year in the future. That is just a very typical life you get when you're playing stax decks. But we can increase consistency with the commander's activation even further with madness cards. Now we don't have that many, but we have some that are actually kinda good, capable of dealing with creatures, as well as potential flashback cards as well. If you wanna take a look on how I've exactly put this deck together, then link as always in the description below of the video. I honestly really like this commander, it feels fun, it has a cool gimmick, it has a very cool game play style. There's a lot of different stax commanders out there with lots of different variations to them, and this has its own gimmicky game plan feeling trick. That's it for this short little deck tech and card review. Thank you so much for watching, hope you liked the video. Take care guys, and I'll see you next time.